What in the kind of noise is that? BMW M3. It's the first model and trim that comes to mind when anyone so much as mentions BMW, and it's the car that paved the way for the slogan, the ultimate driving machine, and for the most part, that's always been true. But with a lifespan going on 35 years of production, the options are plentiful, the opinions are vast, and there's plenty to consider. But which BMW M3 is the best BMW M3? Which one's gonna go down in history as the one you have to have? And maybe most importantly, which one should you buy now before the prices go absolutely insane? Well, buckle up those lap belts, buds, because you're in for a bumpy ride. Today, we're gonna dive into which generation BMW M3 is the greatest of all time. What's going on, guys? I'm Sean B.FI on Instagram, and before we dive right in, please subscribe. We literally upload every single day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and you're not gonna wanna miss any of the fun or the insane giveaways that we do. And this time, for the first time ever, you have 3 different chances to win. First place is gonna win a set of Fortune Auto coilovers and a set of Artisa wheels, and we're gonna wrap those bad boys in Continental tires. And get this, the second winner is gonna win a set of Artisa wheels of their choice, and the third place winner is going to get a $200 gift card to fitmentindustries.com. And we're doing all this to raise money for Reach Out Worldwide, which is a charity organization that aids in disaster relief by not only helping clean up and supply materials to help rebuild, but also with medical care to treat chronic conditions related to natural disasters and supply MREs and water filtration devices to affected communities. So if you want to help out a badass charity, get some sick apparel, and get entered in for a chance to win wheels, tires, suspension, another set of wheels, and or a gift card, head over to fitmentindustries.com to get entered now. Let's get started. The first generation BMW M3 came to us in a much more special way than our M3s come to us today. The E30 M3 was quite literally born to race. In fact, the whole main reason behind the E30 M3's existence was Group A racing, which is a production-based class that demanded that each race car share its core mechanical components with a road car, of which at least 5,000 examples had to be produced. So BMW Motorsports designed the race car first and then applied the least amount of necessary changes possible to the road car in order to meet the requirements or homologation standards of being allowed to race in Group A racing. I know I said that word a little weird. I don't even remember which one it was.
Road core.
Road core. Because of this, the E30 M3 street version and the E30 M3 competition versions are both very similar. For example, but not limited to, the widened fenders needed to accommodate up to 10-inch wide racing tires on the competition car had to be identical to the street car as well. So you get that crazy race car look from the factory. The C-pillar is also wider and has more rake than the regular 3 Series. So then the trunk lid is also higher than the non-M car as well to help aid with that airflow and aerodynamics system on the racetrack. Regular 3 Series cars had 4 lug hubs and the M cars had 5 lug hubs, and the list goes on and on. What I'm getting at is that the E30 M3 wasn't just a performance version. It was the homologation spec race car tweaked to be street legal and shares very little with an actual 3 Series. But even with its high revving 2.3 liter S14, the 4-cylinder only made 192 horsepower and 177 foot-pounds of torque, which isn't necessarily bad at the time, but 0 to 60 took nearly 7 damn seconds. Not something that would spark a ton of joy outside of an actual racetrack, which probably explains why these cars were a complete and total flop in the US, even at the same cost of a mid-trim 325 when new. However, this is the most collectible M3 of all of the generations for all of those reasons. But then along came the E36 M3. The second generation of M3 was not a homologation race car, but rather a performance variant of the 3 Series. The E36 M3 picked up a whole 50 ponies and a little bit more than that torque, with a more aggressive power curve from a larger 6-cylinder engine, good enough to make the E36 spring to 60 in 5.9 seconds, which is a whole second quicker than the E30. The E36 was easier to modify, cheaper to maintain, easier to drive, and more comfortable than the homologation special that the E30 was. Not to mention you got all that added benefit for about the same money. And the look was an absolute instant hit. With that, the M3 was now offered in coupe, convertible, and sedan form in the US, thus opening up the market to a huge group of buyers who wanted a sport-oriented car with the optional utility of a sedan. Needless to say, the E36 sold in much higher numbers than Grandpa E30 over here, which is awesome for BMW, but not so awesome from a collector's perspective. As of now, these cars are starting to see an uptick in value, but for most of the last decade, these cars were just a dime a dozen. Some of them have become real boxes, especially in areas that were prone to salt. That and, you know, the whole thing where the US spec cars aren't considered to be true M cars. When the E36 M3 launched, both US and European versions had a 3-liter inline-6 and a 5-speed manual transmission, but the European spec cars got a more interesting powertrain. They got the Vanos variable valve timing system and individual throttle bodies, giving it 286 horsepower as compared to the US market's 240. Then in 96, displacement was bumped up to 3.2 liters, and the European version's power was up to 321 horsepower and got a 6-speed manual gearbox, while the US spec M3 still had that same 240 horsepower and that same old 5-speed manual gearbox.
What the hell?
So although these are fantastic cars and they sold like friggin' hotcakes, they are, and kind of always will be, considered the M3 that was more 328 than it was an M car. And then we were graced by the spirit of the car gods, and for the E46 generation, we got a full-fledged M3 that had all the good stuff from Europe. The 8,000 RPM, 333 horsepower, 3.2 liter was a game changer stateside for the new millennium, with no more sedan option, only available in coupe and convertible. This naturally aspirated 6-cylinder European car was making very similar power to the 5.7 liter V8 Corvette at the time, which was damn near unheard of. Granted, it was a little more expensive than that Corvette, but you know. This was also a time that BMW would let you get a sequential manual gearbox that everyone hates now. But at the time, it was insane to have that kind of technology outside of a supercar. They were trying new stuff, giving us V8 power from a high-tech and racy 6-cylinder, and giving domestic V8 purists a run for their money. And let's face it, most of us Euro guys are just ex-tuner fans that got sick of getting made fun of by domestic V8 guys, and now that someone finally beat them without a V8, we jumped right on that bandwagon, and now here I am with a bunch of broken and needy European project cars. So anyway, this was all before the big horsepower wars, and BMW really wouldn't have needed this much power and capability to sell at this price point, but they did it anyway, and that's what makes this generation M3 so sought after. Now, granted, they do have their, let's say, fair share of issues, like expensive SMG failures, rear subframe mounts disintegrating, and you know how the rod bearings eat themselves and throw metal shavings all over the engine in a desperate attempt at destroying itself from all those RPMs. Alas, with increasing demand for late 90s and early 2000s icons skyrocketing in price, it's only suit that the NA 6-cylinder BMW that made more power than a twin-turbo Mark IV Super for less money follows suit. And then all of a sudden in 2008, BMW went completely and bumped power up almost another 100 horsepower to 414 with an 8,400 RPM 4 friggin' liter V8 that's touted as the best sounding M3 of all time. What? Keep in mind, at the time of its release, the Mustang had 300 horsepower. There was no Camaro, there was no Chargers or Challengers. This was straight out of left field with its sights aimed directly at taking on heavy-hitting sports cars in the industry. And of course, the sedan was back, and it was here to kick ass and take names, with a Nürburgring lap time nearly equivalent to a 2006 911 GT3. It was absolutely insane. Now, it wasn't all sunshine and ripe berries. The lightweight, high-revving engine was quite exotic, and although the engine components themselves were pretty robust, the S65 engine was prone to its own share of problems that, you know, since the engine was unique to the chassis, was pretty expensive to repair and maintain. The S65 was still prone to the rod and main bearing wear that the E46 saw, and in typical rev-happy engine form, will go through a lot of oil when driven hard. And let me tell you something, 10W60 oil isn't exactly cheap. And the underwhelming 295 foot-pounds of torque didn't exactly make it easy to drive slow. With that, the clunky iDrive system used in this era is even worse now, not to mention it's completely hideous to look at. A lot of people consider the E46 to be the last real M car, but I'd beg to differ that the largest displacement naturally aspirated version is more BMW M car than the rest ever will be, and are currently fantastic bargains on the used market. Typically, these are in that same price range or just a little bit above that of an E46 M3, and it's way more car for the money in my opinion. Then for the F80 generation, BMW made the inevitable jump into the turbocharged world, and the M3 would become sedan only and rebrand the coupe equivalent to the M4. Some people were a bit let down that the M3 was no longer naturally aspirated, yet some were also ecstatic that the 6-cylinder was back. Others were just excited to finally get a car that could be easily built upon with all the tuning options for turbo cars, let alone the update to the quickly dated interior of that E90. Anyway, the twin-turbo 3-liter 6-cylinder was now making 425 horsepower, which is only 11 more than the E90, but it made 406 foot-pounds of torque at 1,800 RPM, which is not only 110 more torques, but in a much lower, more usable place in the rev range. To say giving a shitload more torque and give it better drivability makes it worse would be completely asinine. But in doing so, you lose a lot of that character that comes from having to really push the car to get the fun out of it. So is it the quickest, easiest to make power in, and leagues better on the inside that's also capable of much more significant performance? Absolutely, but there is no doubting that it comes at the cost of some of the character that M cars used to have. That was the last car we talked about. Now we're wrapping it up and then the outro. You're welcome. But enough with all the specs and the power numbers, enough with the speculation and beating around the bush. Which M3 is the best M3 of all time? Which one's gonna take the friggin' cake? God, I love cake. And which one is gonna go down in history and become the golden ticket for BMW collectors for generations to come? Well, I actually have a couple theories about just that. Now, historically speaking, over time, the cars that seem to become the most significant are the end of an era, the largest displacement, most amount of cylinder versions that went against the grain or made significant strides in automotive pop culture. In this case, that would almost hands down go to the E90 and E92 M3. It was the only V8. It still is the largest displacement engine ever put into an M3. It's the highest revving engine ever put into an M3. And it introduced the carbon fiber roof to street cars. And it will go down in history as the best sounding M car in history. However, on the flip side, when I dug into the subject, I found that the community has a much different answer. Even asking people around the office, both BMW M car owners, M car enthusiasts, and enthusiasts of other vehicles and not BMW fans, the answer was always E46 M3. It's ultimately the most iconic M3 and kind of made the most waves. And let's be real, its timing couldn't have been better. The E46 M3 had everything going for it to be extremely successful, and it all happened right at peak fast movie culture. And although the E46 never seen a significant role in the series, car culture from this era turned into real pop culture because of this. And it's those cars that were at the top of their game when this happened that are becoming valued and the favorites of even non-car people. So ultimately, I think it's that pop culture iconic attribute of the E46 M3 that's going to attribute to its universal ability to be recognized by the masses that's going to increase demand and eventually take those already rising prices and send them through the roof. So there you have it. The best M3 from an all-around perspective is the E46 M3, but that's about it for this one. However, we will be making more videos like this one, so please leave a comment below and let us know what cars you guys want to see us cover next. Make sure you guys are subscribed and getting notifications to stay in the loop with all the crazy stuff we're doing. And of course, don't forget to head over to fitmentindustries.com for any and all of your wheel, tire, and suspension needs. I'm Sean B.FI on Instagram. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't hate me.